So if you would turn with me to Mark chapter 2, we're going to be reading verses 23 to the end of chapter 3, verse 6. Okay, so a little bit in two different chapters here. And this passage is about Jesus being the Lord of the Sabbath. So you ever heard this word Sabbath before? We're going to be getting into this a lot this morning. So let me read it to you. Verse 23 of chapter 2. One Sabbath, he was going through the grain fields. And as they made their way, his disciples began to pluck heads of grain. And the Pharisees were saying to him, "Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" And he said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he was in need and was hungry, he and those who were with him? How he entered the house of God in the time of Abiathar the high priest and ate the bread of the presence, which it is not lawful for any but the priests to eat, and also gave it to those who were with him. And he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." Again, he entered the synagogue, and a man was there with a withered hand. And they watched Jesus to see whether he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. And he said to the man with the withered hand, "Come here." And he said to them, "Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to kill?" But they were silent. And he looked around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart, and said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was restored. The Pharisees went out immediately, held counsel with the Herodians against him, how to destroy him. This is the word of the Lord. How are you doing with rest? Are you feeling rested lately? Are you feeling restless? How are you doing not only with feeling rested, but actually being rested physically, spiritually, emotionally? How are you doing with feeling rested? Do you have time in your week where you are truly still before the Lord, still in the presence of God? Does that ever happen for you in the week? Do you ever just sit alone in the presence of God just to be with him and listen? How true is Psalm 23 of you, that God leads us beside still waters, that he makes us lie down in green pastures? How true is that psalm of you? How true do you want it to be? Do you want to feel rested? Do you want to rest and be still before God? Jesus one time said, "Come to me, all who labor, and I will give you rest." So this is a big thing that Jesus is about, giving us rest. I just want to say from the get-go, there is no experience in this life, no payday, no vacation, no spa treatment, no meal, no drug, no therapy that compares with the rest available in the gospel of Jesus Christ. You take everything in this world and you compare it to the rest that is available in the gospel of Jesus Christ, and it does not pale in comparison. Do you believe this? Is this something that you've ever believed or tasted before? Just thinking about what is in the gospel. Like in the gospel, you have the Almighty God has done a work to reconcile us to himself, to adopt us into his family. That all the works in our internal life that we're trying to do to get back to the garden, to find that rest, that in Jesus, he's provided it in full. through his blood and his death and his resurrection, that there is a rest available in the gospel of Jesus Christ that we have access to, that he is the Lord of the Sabbath. He is the Lord of stopping and resting. Guys, where we're going this morning is one, what is the Sabbath? What is it? Number two, who is the Sabbath? And number three, how do you Sabbath? So number one, what is the Sabbath? Because the Sabbath is a gift that God has given us to empower us to rest in him. One of the ways to look at this is there is a thing in the Midwest on farms and in Canada, some in Alaska, called a whiteout rope. A whiteout rope. A whiteout rope is a rope that they will literally tie from the porch or the house of a house on the farm all the way to the barn or wherever it is you might go, so that when you're traveling out to the barn or you're coming back to the house in these farms, blizzards can hit so hard and so fast, they call them a whiteout blizzard, that within minutes you could not even see your hand in front of your face. And that they have found people 3 feet from their house dead, frozen. And so the whiteout rope is a rope for the whiteout blizzards, that when you're going to and from, you walk, even if it's in the winter and there's a potential of a blizzard, you'd walk along the rope, and then if the blizzard hits, you reach down, pick it up, and you can find your way back. The Sabbath that God has given us is very much like the whiteout rope. It's an anchor. In the times of when it's built into your life, it's like this anchor point that when the storms of life hit, when the busyness of life hits, when the crises hit, you have this thing built into your life to survive and to rest and to have an anchor to get back home. That's what a Sabbath in a sense is, because I'll tell you what, I believe that one of the greatest, if not the greatest threat to your spiritual life is not some big catastrophic decision that you could make to ruin everything. It's the low hum of busyness that just hums in your ear and that deafens you to the voice of God and the presence of God. The Sabbath is meant to provide a day in the week for us to come before the Lord and rest and get that busyness out of our ear so that we can experience him, and then that one day can shape the rest of our days during the week. So let's get into this. What is the Sabbath? In this verse, you see that Jesus is walking through a grain field with his disciples. His disciples pick some heads of grain and are kind of like eating a little snack. And then the Pharisees, who we've talked about, are the big rule keeper guys who've made up a lot of extra rules that aren't even in the Bible and expect other people to obey them. They're mad and frustrated that they're picking some grain because they broke some rule. Right out of the gate, just so you know, this is a rule that's not in the scripture. They made up 39 different rules that you were supposed to follow. And so this rule that they're doing is not something that's actually against the law of God. Jesus never broke any of the laws of God. He never broke the actual Sabbath. But they did break these made up rules. Okay? And so what was their understanding of the Sabbath at the time? Well, it goes back to the first story. The very first story in the world has the Sabbath in it. When God made the world, he made the world and worked for 6 days. On the 7th day, God himself, who was not tired, who did not need to rest, chose to stop. The word Sabbath means to stop, to cease. He stopped working and had a whole day where he rested. Then you see in the 10 Commandments, it comes back, and in Exodus 28, you have a verse that says, remember the Sabbath day. So one of the interesting things, even in the 10 Commandments, where the Sabbath shows up real explicitly, is it wasn't being called into existence in the 10 Commandments. It was remember the Sabbath day. So it was even, hey, go back to the very formation and the creation of the whole universe, and you see this thing built into the fabric of creation, to remember this day when God stopped, when God took a break. In the 10 Commandments, it's in a very important location. It's the 4th commandment. So the first 3 commandments are all about worshiping God, putting God first, making him your ultimate thing, not worshiping anything else, not worshiping idols or anything else and putting anything else before him. And so the 4th commandment is, okay, the first step in doing that, what do? You have one day of the week where you stop from working, achieving, striving for success, and you rest. You cease before the Lord and be in his presence. Okay? So this is the first step in putting God first, is having a day dedicated to him. Some details about it. In the Old Testament, you see 4 things that were very explicitly prohibited, just to help you understand. Number 1, you could not kindle a fire. So all of your meal prep had to be done the day before. And so on the Sabbath, no one was to make, in a sense, any food. You had to eat food, but you were to cease from even making food. You'd kindle the fires before the Sabbath. Number 2, there was no buying or selling of goods. So imagine Chick-fil-A, that's everybody, okay? Everybody closes down shop, and there's no buying or selling of anything. And by the way, Chick-fil-A is the most profitable per-store restaurant in the country. Very interesting. They miss 52 days out of the year, but are still the most profitable, okay? Very interesting. Number 3, there's no bearing burdens. No bearing burdens. So this is referring to like your buddy needs a deck fixed. It's like, hey, take a break. Don't work. Don't even work on your deck or do any kind of chores. Take a break. Have a day where you're fully rested before the Lord. The work permitted on the Sabbath was military campaigns. So if someone's attacking you, yes, pick up a sword and fight. Or if there's something you got to go fight out there, that's okay. Weddings were permitted, so you could have big feasts and celebrations for weddings. All the priestly duties, the priests were working on the Sabbath day, doing their thing. You could visit a man of God, okay? So if you're like, hey, what are you doing today? I'm going to go visit a man of God. You could go do that, whatever that is. And then a very important detail, you opened the east gate. You opened the east gate. Now, what is the east gate? There was a gate in Jerusalem that was the east gate. It was also referred to as the beautiful gate. And this was all symbolic, but it was very important. 6 days a week, this gate was to remain closed. So it stayed closed all 6 days. On the 7th day, during the Sabbath, the big deal, you go over there, and the priest would open the gate. And this was symbolic too. When they opened the gate, the presence of the Lord comes into the city and dwells with them in a unique way. Now, was the presence of God there before? Yes, but it was a liturgical worship experience where you visualize the gate is opening. We're going to rest today, and God's presence is going to come in here in a unique way, and we're going to be with him. We'll come back to the east gate in a bit because Jesus does some interesting things on with the east gate. The penalty of breaking the Sabbath was death. The penalty was death to break the Sabbath. Exodus 35:2 says, "For 6 days work is to be done, but the 7th day shall be your holy day, a day of Sabbath rest to the Lord. Whoever does any work on it is to be put to death." Now, you may hear that and think, that sounds really extreme. What's going on there? Well, 2 things. One, if you don't understand that God is holy and completely without sin. And when he makes a command, to break that command, the penalty is death. The wages of sin is death. He is a holy, awesome, righteous God, and he is not to be trifled with. He is not someone you mess around with. He is holy, and he is perfect, and he is just. And if you break his commandments, he has the right to have you put to death. That is just a reality of the Old Testament and the whole Bible. God is holy. Number 2, it would have been very, in a sense, difficult to break the Sabbath in the sense that the whole city is doing it. The whole community is doing it. So you got to really say, okay, I'm going to open a store. It would be very visible. It would be very obvious. No one else is doing that. So it was and in one sense, it was a big deal to try to break the Sabbath. But it is serious. It's serious business. God is holy. What were its purposes? What were his purposes? We have 4 purposes I want to throw at you. One, it was one of the things, it was a boundary from the powerful oppressing the poor. So it was a boundary from the powerful oppressing the poor. You have to understand, they were coming from where? Egypt. So they're coming from Egypt when they get the 10 Commandments. And what had they experienced in Egypt? No days off. They were slaves. They were worked to death. Their backs were broken in work. And so part of this is God creating a civil justice issue of, hey, everybody, no matter how rich, no matter how poor, everybody is going to get a whole day off. So if some of you guys become richer than the other guys, you can't oppress them like you were oppressed in Egypt by breaking their backs in work. Everybody gets a day off to rest. Number two, it's a boundary to empower flourishing. It empowers flourishing. God has built this rhythm into the creation of the universe, into our very lives and existence, that if we don't rest, we will wither. We will, in a sense, be destroyed. Like to rest, to learn how to rest well, physically, emotionally, spiritually, causes us to flourish. I saw a very interesting statistic stat this week from this expert on the Oregon Trail, a historian named Dorian DeMayo. If you're not familiar with the Oregon Trail, they would travel from cities like Springfield, Missouri, or Liberty, Missouri, from over to Northern California or Oregon. They would take caravans and these, not trailers, what are those things, wagons, right? And pulled by horses, and it'd be big groups of people. So like several families would travel for 4 to 5 months to get there. Now, one of the things this guy Dorian said was, an interesting detail, many of the caravans would be split over a decision, would they honor the Sabbath? Some would be like, we got to get there as fast as we can. And they would not take a day off, and they would just burn themselves out traveling. Other groups would take the Sabbath seriously and take a whole day on the way there, which could be anywhere from 20 to 25 days, traveling, of saying we're going to take a full day and stop and rest and worship, right? And try to avoid dysentery or whatever it is that you get along the way. What he said was, those who stopped to rest on the Sabbath, the majority of the time, would still get there first and would have less deaths among animals and humans. They're stopping 20 to 25 times, and they still get there first. Because God has built into us, we need to rest, and the more they rest, the more they're energized for the other 6 days. Secular books. So many secular books have come out recently in the past few years, not even Christian, saying, hey, there's something about taking a whole day to deeply rest. Alex Sujung Kim Pang wrote a book, Rest, Why You Get More Done When You Work Less. It's about how deep rest and play is essential for creativity and sustainable productivity. He talks about how the highly successful people prioritize deep downtime. Another book, Marilyn Paul, An Oasis in Time, How a Day of Rest Can Save Your Life. Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, Sacred Rest, Recover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, Restore Your Sanity. It's about how Sabbath keeping is not just for the irreligious, for the religious, it's for anybody because it helps you. I could go on about all these different books. There's several of them. What are they all getting at? They're just tapping into what God has revealed in His Word and has shown us for thousands of years. A day of rest is essential for flourishing. Another thing that it does to us is it's a boundary to not worship work. It's a boundary to not worship work. Work, success, achieving, I believe is one of the most dangerous drugs. Succeeding in life can be one of the most addictive drugs. Derek Thompson wrote in The Atlantic this quote, let me read it to you. The economies of the early 20th century did not foresee that work might evolve from a means of material production to a means of identity production. They failed to anticipate that for the poor and middle class, work would remain a necessity, but for the college-educated elite, it would morph into a kind of religion, promising identity, transcendence, and community. Call it workism. This guy Derek is just saying the same thing that we've seen in the Bible the whole time, that work can become your God. Your success can become your God. Your achieving can become the thing that you worship in your fundamental identity in life. Lastly, it's a boundary to know our limitations. It's a boundary to know our limitations. We have been brainwashed, I believe, from birth that we have no limits. Our culture tells us we have no limits. You can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. And man, that results in a lot of personal issues, a lot of issues for our whole culture and society. I was listening to Tom Holland, who's a famous historian from England, and he was asking the question, what is the most influential song of the 20th century that was a part of shaping the minds of the people of the West? And he says he believes that it's also the first sung by an animal, Jiminy the Cricket. And what's the name of that song? Yes. If You Wish Upon a Star. What is that song about? Whatever you wish, if you dream it, it will come true. So what Tom Holland was saying is the same thing that Nietzsche and Hume and these philosophers who are like peddling this philosophy in the higher places, that you can be whatever you want, there is no God, we need to create our own identity through our work and through going for it. Holland is just saying that idea up there came down and captured the hearts of children. If you wish upon a star, you can be whatever you want to be, right? Guys, we are brainwashed in the sea of your identity is limitless. Whatever you want to be, whatever you want to do. So many things in the Bible, the Sabbath especially, is a built-in safeguard and boundary to say you have limits. There's going to be a day where you stop and you let go of control and you trust that there's a good God that's going to take care of you even if you don't work that day, even if you don't look at any email that day. The next day, the emails will still be there and everyone will be alive. No one's going to die, right? You can let go for a day and rest in God. So big picture, Sabbath is a gift from God to empower worshiping Him and human flourishing. Now, a big piece, if we miss this, it is not just a day for leisure. The primary purpose is the worship of God, and we do it through stopping, resting, playing, and leisure, okay? So you may say, okay, great, this is a lot of Old Testament stuff, but Jesus obviously changed something about it, right? When you read the New Testament, and right here, right now, nobody's getting the death penalty for this, okay? So what has changed about the Sabbath? Because it's obviously different now than it was in the Old Testament. And if you're saying that, you're right. It is different. It is not the same. The application is not the same. One verse that you could go to is Colossians 2:16-17. Let me read it to you. It says, "Let no one pass judgment on you in questions of food and drink, or with regard to a festival, or a new moon, or a Sabbath. These are a shadow of the things to come, but the substance belongs to Christ." Now, this is a big conversation that a lot of people have disagreement over. Where we land with this is that this verse and many others and what Jesus is saying about the Sabbath, even in this passage of Him being the Lord of the Sabbath, that Jesus fulfilling the Old Testament covenant, fulfilling all the law, beginning a new covenant, has changed our relationship to the Sabbath. That He is lumping together the Sabbath with ceremonial laws that were shadows of what's to come, which means now Sabbath is no longer a civil, judicial issue. It is not something that someone's going to fall under the death penalty of, because on one hand, Israel, the nation, is no longer God's primary people. The church is. We're in the church age, and so the church is people and communities in every nation, and so to carry this out judicially makes absolutely no sense anymore. It's now a wisdom issue, an individual wisdom issue. In a sense, the fabric of the command is still built into creation. But the judicial carrying out of punishment for it is gone. And so for each individual, what is He saying here? Don't pass judgment on one another. This assumes people are going to do it differently. This assumes people are going to do it differently. So however you do it, don't pass judgment on others for how they do it. But we do believe that there is still a value of striving for some kind of Sabbath for you and your walk with the Lord. A big mistake would be to look at how it's talked about in the New Covenant and say, oh, okay, look at this. Don't pass judgment on one another. Jesus is here saying, you're not for it, but it's for you, and then completely ditching it, and then completely throwing it out the window. And then in your life being busy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, having your kids busy achieving Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday come along and you're still busy, working your kids to death, working yourself to death, never stopping. You do that for 6 months. And I promise you, you are discipling yourself and your family into anxiety, into workaholism, and possibly into depression, and who knows what long term. That we are built to have a day where we stop and we rest. However, how you do it and however other people do it, there is a warning. Do not pass judgment on one another. Everybody's got to kind of figure that out for themselves, what that looks like. So second point, who is the Sabbath? We're going to cruise through these next 2 points. Who is the Sabbath? Well, Jesus responds to the Pharisees by referring to a story where David is traveling along. He's got some buddies with him. He's fleeing from Saul. He goes into a temple and he breaks some ceremonial laws, right? And the Pharisees respected David. They looked up to David. Jesus did this a few times where he would refer to David to make a point to show them they're wrong. And so he's pointing out, hey, one time David and his buddies broke some ceremonial laws. For what reason? To care for themselves, to not starve, and to care for these guys that he was with. And nobody at that time had a problem with it. The point that Jesus is making about this story is that caring for people takes precedence over ceremonial law. The Sabbath and the whole law, its ultimate purpose is for people's flourishing. It's to help people flourish and to thrive and to grow. The Pharisees, as I mentioned, had developed all these laws, all these extra things to do, and they had lost sight of the purpose of the Sabbath. The purpose of the Sabbath was rest. But if you fill that day with all these extra rules and all of your controlling stuff, the day becomes about what? Control. It becomes about controlling everything, right? And one of the things we know about truly resting is letting go of control. It's not being in control. It's trusting that God's in control. When you sleep at night, think about it. What are you doing? When anybody physically falls asleep, you are letting go of control. You are trusting that your surroundings are safe. We took the kids camping this summer and we're in the woods, and we're camping and you were in a tent. And what happens if the little kids, just an illustration, adults too, but kids also, we had seen a bear earlier that day. What happens if you're somewhere and you don't trust your surroundings are safe? You hear a noise, you hear a stick break, you hear something in the woods. Oh, you're awake. You're not going to sleep. You're not going to fall asleep until you feel that you are safe. Spiritual rest. Really resting in the Lord, like experiencing spiritual true rest, is trusting that God is good. He's in control of your surroundings. And no matter what happens, He's good and He's got it. And His promises will be fulfilled and you are taken care of. That is spiritual soul rest. And what these guys were doing was filling the day with all this controlling stuff. Once again, there is no amount of things we can do to work ourselves into true rest. It's something that we receive from the true and living God. What's worth also paying attention to this story is Jesus' emotional reaction to what they're doing. Jesus' emotional reaction is very interesting. There's this word anger and grieving, but if you look at the Greek, this is a fierce anger. Like he's fired up, angry. Deep grieving. It's like he's both grieving and angry when he looks at what they're doing. It's like he's about to heal a guy, and they're so focused on all the rules and controlling everything, and he's there to heal this guy's arm, do this beautiful thing, and they miss it. And it makes Jesus fired up, like he's fiercely angry and deeply grieving. It's a fascinating line. Another fascinating thing is that at the end of this passage, the Pharisees and the Herodians team up. Now, for us to read that, I read that for years and had no idea what that meant. Back in the day, if you read this, you would be shocked. These two groups of people are guys that are going to knife each other in a back alley normally. They hate each other, okay? Now, some, I believe, have made the mistake of saying, oh yeah, this is the Pharisees are like the red states, the Herodians are like the blue states, and here Jesus is bringing together the political parties, and now they both want to kill him. Now, I think it's a little too complex to make that simple of a layover, okay? However, the reason people say that is there are some similarities, okay? Jesus was a third wayism kind of guy. He's in the middle of something, and people on the right and the left both ended up hating him. And they even teamed up to want to kill him. The Pharisees were similar to red state type things with like traditionalism, moral, striving and, different things like that. The Herodians were kind of like the party people, the ones who like didn't regard the God's law at all, had partnered with Rome. Like they were like, there's some similarities, but it is at least worth noting that there were people in that day, the people on the right, and in that day, the people on the left that wanted to kill each other did partner up. They both wanted Jesus dead. Now, why did they want Jesus dead? This line, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. This line that he says here is even crazier than when he said, like he forgave the one guy's sins a few weeks ago. We saw that, and they said, that's blasphemy. You can't forgive sins. That's only something God can do. For Jesus to say that he's Lord of the Sabbath, that is a direct claim of deity. That is saying he is the God of rest. That whole day of Sabbath that you guys do, that's all about me. The Sabbath is about me. That is a wild claim. So a warning that I think we all need to have is, as the Pharisees missed the true meaning of the Sabbath through their controlling attitude, and they even wanted to kill Jesus, they didn't want to be with Jesus, they didn't want to be in his presence, our own controlling heart is going to be the thing that keeps us from pushing Jesus away, from opening ourselves up to being with him, and instead filling our day with busyness and stuff. It's kind of like this. I think view it like this. It's a gift. God is giving you this gift. Are you going to take it and open it up and use it? Let's say one spouse gives another spouse a gift card to a fancy restaurant, right? And the purpose of this gift is to what? Go spend time together. And the spouse that receives the gift card says, I don't want to use this. I don't want to use it. What would that communicate? They don't want to spend time with their spouse. God has given you a gift, the Sabbath. And this Sabbath is about saying, I want to spend time with you. So if you say, no, I'm not into this, I don't want to do this, I'm not going to do it, or you consciously don't do it the rest of your life, why? Why not? What is it preventing you from achieving or getting or doing that's better than the presence of God? So last point, let's close with some practical things. How do we practice Sabbath? What does this look like in this day and age in the new covenant? How do we do this? Number one, whatever work is for you, and most of the work all of us do, we don't get paid for. So this isn't just occupational work. Whatever you look at your week, and what is your work? You have a day, or at least the majority of the day, you stop and cease. Yesterday, I didn't look at emails one time, okay? Guess what? The church didn't fall apart, Nobody died. It's okay. Like, you can have a day where you cut your job out. For some, this will look like maybe no phone for a day. Maybe for you, it's no shopping for a day. Maybe for you, it's no chores around the house for a day. Whatever it is, we can't pass judgment on one another, but what's it going to be for you? What are you going to stop doing? Number two, making gathered worship a priority on Sunday is an obvious low-hanging fruit. The New Testament, you see this transition of verbiage from Sabbath to this thing called the Lord's Day. And the Lord's Day is associated with gathering with the community of believers and worshiping God. taking in the Lord's Supper, the preaching of the word, all the different things that we do here, fellowship with one another, greeting one another, doing that piece. Prioritizing the Lord's Day is key. My family growing up, my parents didn't work at a church, but unless someone was dog sick, if we were in town, we were at church. There was no missing church. There was nothing that was going to take the place of church. And as a kid, that did something to me. I remember it communicated to me, this is important. And a little kid, when you say church is important, what does a kid associate church with? God. So it was like, God is important. We're going to prioritize gathered worship. I went to church with an NFL football player once, and that NFL football player at the time was in the NFL. He was literally actually playing, and he had a son, and he was on a football team, and that football team decided to start doing practice on Sunday morning. And that NFL football player said, no, we're not going to be on this team, or we're not going to show up to practice. And I remember he said, his kid actually, he didn't say this, but his kid, he actually has a chance to make money playing sports, okay? Now he said, it is very unlikely that kids one day are going to make any money playing sports. And if they do, it's only for a few years. You worship Jesus forever. You worship Jesus forever. There's plenty of times to practice on Saturday, even Sunday afternoon. But the big picture is, what are we doing to our children? Do they have a whole day to rest and play and not be achieving and working and performing? Because our culture, we're drowning in busyness, in achievement, and work. Number 3, practicing stillness. Having a big chunk of at least one day a week, as much as you can. I know it's hard if you got little kids and different things, but you figure out and work hard to have one day where you're still before the Lord. You have some extended time to be still before Him, to be in His presence, to pray and to talk, and to listen and to see what happens. This could look like going on a walk. This could look like pulling out a book and sitting on a comfortable chair. This could look like, in weather like this, laying on a blanket in your backyard, just being present and resting before the Lord. And lastly, not forgetting the main goal is Jesus. The main goal is Jesus and His gospel. The Pharisees created all kinds of rhythms. They practiced the way. They were apprentices of God. They did all these rhythms and things. They filled their whole day with it, right? You could do things, but miss the whole point, and that's Jesus. When Jesus came into Jerusalem in the triumphal entry, you know what gate He came through? He came through the east gate. He rode through the east gate because Ezekiel had prophesied that the Messiah would come from the east. He would come through the east gate in a sense. And Jesus rode in through the east gate. Now, the east gate is still there. A Muslim named Suleiman, around the year 1200, put up a huge stone wall to block the east gate. And he said, we're going to block this east gate because we don't want the Messiah to be able to come through. We would call him a total fool because Jesus already came through. He has ascended to heaven. He is Lord of the Sabbath, and we have access to Him every day. We have access to Him all the time. He is Lord of the Sabbath, and the rest that He provides is ours. It's been given to us. He will never love us less. He will never love us more. And we can rest in the gospel of Jesus Christ, that He has done the work. Come to me, all who labor, and I will give you rest. Last week, I referred to the story of Eric Liddell, how he skipped one of the races of the Olympics in the 1924 Olympics. So Eric Liddell qualified for 3 races, the 100, I think the 200, and the 400. The 100 dash, or whatever they call it back then, meter dash, was on a Sunday. Eric Liddell chose to not race that day. Now, I personally believe he could have. We would not know who he is. No one would ever be talking about him. He would have been completely forgotten. There would never been a movie about him. He could have done it, and he would have been completely forgotten. we only remember him because he did this. That's not a reason to do it, just to be remembered. But we just wouldn't know. Eric Little skipped running that day. I don't think he had to. I think the important question, though, is how was he able to do that? Why was he able to do that? I believe he ended up dying in a Japanese concentration camp as a missionary. I believe he believed something. He didn't need it. He didn't need to achieve another medal. He had the love of God. He was already approved by God. He was already perfectly loved by God. He doesn't need it. I don't need another medal. Who cares? I can go worship on that Sunday. Guys, Jesus on the cross said, what? It is what? It is finished. The work is done. The work is done. The work of salvation, of earning your ultimate status or achievement is done. It is finished. You don't have to earn anything. You don't have to prove anything. The world doesn't depend upon you. Your salvation does not depend upon you. It depends on Christ. Come to him, all who labor and are heavy laden, and find rest for your souls. For his burden is easy and his yoke is light. Guys, as we come to the table this morning, let's make this about receiving his rest. He allowed his blood to be shed for you so you wouldn't have to work for it anymore. He allowed his body to be broken for you so that you don't have to work for it anymore. He achieved it for you.